the phrase that I love to use is this or something better. If I don't get this, there's a reason and it's going to be something better. Instead of pitting your whole sense of hope onto one specific outcome, this job, this department, you tell yourself that two things can be true at the same time. You get to hold both at once instead of betting everything on just one door. Hello, and welcome back to the Empower Her podcast. When I got my first coaching job that wasn't in my own business, the night before the interview, the last interview I had, I recorded myself on a video saying, I'm going to get this job, I'm going to do well. I remember I had a bun in my hair, it was dark outside because it was November, and I did a selfie recording and I said to myself, I'm going to manifest this, I am going to get this job. And I got the job. And, this episode is not going to be about toxic positivity. Obviously, I didn't get the job just because I said I was going to get it. I was qualified, I worked hard, I prepped for the interviews, I bonded with the person on the other end. There was a lot that went into it. So this episode is not about toxic positivity or manifestation magic, right? I don't believe that manifestation is some sort of magic. Yes, it is energetic and it is about the universe, but it isn't about just something poof coming into your life randomly and happening. It really is about a practical, specific mental habit and why it works, even if you feel like you're not naturally wired for it to work. So just like as a premise, me as a person, and I think that people around me recently would say this, is I am a naturally anxious person and a worrier. It isn't just about, thinking positive for someone to never spout, right? I am someone that prepares for A scenario, B scenario, C scenario, all the way up till Z scenario. I prepare for every worst case because I don't want to be surprised. And a lot of that comes from wanting to be in control and wanting to control the outcome. So I see every single angle, right? Like that's the nature of my personality. I'm very type A, I'm a firstborn daughter, like all of the things, right? And so that is really what allows me to be that kind of person. And my default setting was always worrying, thinking that the worst case would happen. And I would say to some degree, it hasn't totally changed because I still think I'm a generally more anxious person. But since 2020, I've had a complete reframe around what that actually looks like. In 2020, and I've talked about this many times on the podcast, I was a very anxious person. I went through a very hard time in 2020. Before the pandemic, during the pandemic, I had panic attacks. I was not my best self mentally, just absolutely not my best self. And that is really when I began practicing the different modalities that I now teach my clients. So these are all the nervous system regulation, subconscious reprogramming tools. And it wasn't that these things replaced the worrying. It's just that I am now able to better control those feelings, control how I'm thinking about it, and control how I'm reacting to different situations. The thing is that believing it'll work out was never about predicting outcomes. It's a trained override, not a personality trait. At the end of the day, I had to learn that I cannot control the exact outcome, how it's going to happen. I can work really hard for something. I can want something really bad. I can put in the effort, but sometimes it's going to look a little bit different than I thought it was. And that's also okay. And I want to talk about a couple different scenarios when this has happened in my life, just so you can have an idea too of really what I mean by that. So I want to go back to the interview video that I mentioned. So really like what I did, right? I realized in 2020 I wanted to be a coach. I became certified. I started doing things at my full-time job. I started working with clients. Like I was doing those things to actually get to that point. I also have a lot of experience in management and coaching people in corporate. I had many, many years of experience, resume writing, LinkedIn writing. So I had a lot of the basis for career coaching anyways, right? Not like I was going into a new field that I had 0 years of experience in. All of my cumulative work experience over the last now 14 years has all been to get me to this point now. So I was qualified for the role. I also remember that when I actually saw it on a freelance platform, I sent a really thorough, really thoughtful message to the person. I didn't know who it was at the time. I didn't know what company it was. I just saw the description, what they were looking for. I prepped for the interview. I knew what I wanted to say. I had examples set up. I had different scenarios that I wanted to talk through. I really worked on bringing out my best self and my personality in the interviews. So all of those things are true. And I believed that I could get the role, right? I said it out loud to the camera. I didn't just think it. And I do think there's something to be said about the discomfort of claiming something before you have evidence for it, right? I did not have an official coaching job with someone else before that point. I had other jobs that I had gotten, and I'd gotten good feedback in my work, and I had good feedback on what I was doing, but I had never had a straight out coaching job from someone else. So technically, I didn't have evidence that I would get a job specifically in this field. I just had all this other evidence that I thought could work really well. But I was claiming it before I actually got to the point where I had that specific evidence. Another example is my money mindset. So when I did start coaching and I left corporate, I did have freelance and then I was working on my business. And when I tell you that I was barely making any money, I mean, for American standards, it was literally nothing. For European standard, it was decent, but I mean, I covered my bills basically. I mean, that's really what happened. And I come from a privileged place, so I'm never going to diminish that. But just comparatively, what I made before, what I'm making now is very, very minimal. And it was for a good year and a half, 2 years that I felt that way, that was the case. And it was stressful. I was stressed about money. I had debt on my credit card. There was a lot of things that weren't going the way that I wanted it to. And I kept trying to say to myself, and I kept trying to be in the belief that this is going to pay off before it actually felt like it was. I imagined myself paying off my credit card. I make vision boards for myself, which I've done a podcast episode about. I make vision boards about every 6 months for myself, and I would put on there like my credit card statement is $0 owed. I would put how much money I have in my bank account. I would keep telling myself that I just have to keep going. I just have to keep going. There's this really good graphic that I've seen many, many times, and it's a graphic. So it's two people and they're basically digging and they don't see what they're digging for. And one person gives up early, even though like they're this close to digging out the gold. And then the other person doesn't give up and then they eventually get to the gold. It's the same thing. We don't know when the gold is going to happen. We don't know at what point it's going to come, but we just have to believe that it's going to come and we keep persisting, keep going until we get to that point. And that's the mindset that I had with it, is that I was just going to keep going and keep going until I got to the point where I did make that money that I wanted to, where I did have the success I wanted. And it did pay off. It did pay off because now I'm in a situation where that happened. It is, years later. We're almost at 4 years now, actually 4 years now that I left my corporate job. So it took about 3 years for me to get into a financial position where I felt really comfortable. But was it worth it? To me, absolutely. And again, it's not about denial. It's not about thinking something is going to happen when I'm not making changes. I was constantly making changes. I was iterating in my business. I was seeing what more I could do in freelance. I was trying all these different avenues to see which one would work. And eventually one of them did work. It did work. But I wouldn't have known that had I not tried out the different ways of doing it. So I wasn't passively hoping that I was going to make more money. I was really trying to believe that if I kept going and I kept trying new things and I kept going, that it was going to work, and it did. Now, an example that I'm dealing with right now is I'm apartment hunting. I'm looking for apartments and it can be stressful. And I have had a couple that I really liked. And something that I keep telling myself is if this doesn't work out, if it's not meant to be, then there's something better. There's going to be a better one. because scarcity can come in, especially when I have a very, very hard deadline to find an apartment. It's a very short time frame. I probably, won't be able to wait for all of the things that I'm looking for. And that's where the realism comes in, right? I have a list of things I would love in an apartment, but I'm also realistic that in the short time frame that I have to find something, I may not say yes to all of those. So that's being realistic. Do I still think that I can find something that I'm excited about? Yes, I'm going to stay hopeful and I'm going to think that if one doesn't work out, then something else is going to work out. So that's what's really important. And that's something that I'm really taking into consideration and something that I'm really working on now. But these are all the things, right? I can talk about the things that have happened, like getting the coaching job, like making more money, because those are in the past. I can see now that those were worth it. And now I'm in a situation where I'm not on the other side yet with the apartment hunting, but I'm still going to be hopeful. And it hasn't been easy. I've had my down moments, but I've really had to talk myself and pep talk myself and say, okay, but you've gotten what you wanted before. You're doing the work. You're looking at the places, right? You're looking online. You're going to see them. You're making compromises where it makes sense. Like you're doing all those things. You are going to find something. And so it's really just constantly telling myself that, and that I have been able to get what I'm looking for in the past so I can do it in this situation as well. And, these are a couple of examples that I personally have gone through, but this shows up with my clients a lot as well. So, as most of you know, I work with career coaching clients, and the one pattern that has been coming up recently over and over and over and over again is this idea of my clients right before they're doing interviews, or like during interviews, right when they're in between maybe a first or second round or second and a third round, clients deliberately avoid picturing themselves getting the job. And I've had multiple conversations with them and asked them why. And their honest answer is they say something along the lines of, because if I let myself want it and I don't get the job, I'm going to feel devastated. So basically, what they do is, and this is a normal human defense mechanism, is they protect themselves in advance by trying to stay too neutral or borderline negative, which I think a lot of my clients do fall under. They get negative. They say, oh, I'm not going to get it anyways, or I don't know how I feel, or they think a bunch of things are wrong with it, even though those really aren't any of their red flags or deal breakers, because they're trying to overcompensate because they're worried that if they don't get it, they're going to react very badly to it. They're basically trying to brace for rejection before it's even happened. And again, this makes sense. Like biologically, psychologically, this makes sense. It feels like protection. It feels like you're softening for the blow. But this has a cost. It has a cost because when you can't build momentum towards something, like in an interview, feeling excited getting into it, an interview, it may impact how you show up. It may impact the confidence you have. It may impact the capabilities that you showcase, not that you have, but that you showcase in the interview, because you're so worried and that's taking over. So if you won't even let yourself picture having it, how are you going to actually show them that you can be in this role, right? And that does come down to it. And I always tell my clients too when they're interviewing is, a lot of times, especially when you've made it to the interview rounds, it's not about you not being qualified at that point. They're trying to evaluate who is the best person out of the candidate pool for their role. They need to imagine you in the role. I always say, especially in a hiring manager round, they want to see your thought process and that you show your thought process and you can copy paste that into this role that they are hiring for. And so if you have a hard time picturing it, you can't let yourself be in it, you may also have a hard time being able to articulate that in an actual interview, which arguably is probably the most important thing. And so it can add this layer of self-doubt on top of a situation that can already feel super, super stressful. So I think that the way to, combat this, and when I talk to clients a lot about, is like, okay, can you have multiple eggs in multiple baskets, right? I always like that phrase is, yes, I don't want you to just put all your eggs in this one interview. You can still be excited, but also apply to different roles. Let's try to get interviews for other companies. I don't want this to be the only thing, so that if you do get a rejection, that it's not the end of the world. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to mourn, but I don't want it to be an end all be all for you and then affect your momentum long term. And the thing is that believing it's going to work out is not the same as believing that you are guaranteed to get this exact job. And this is what I tell my clients is, I don't want you to hyper focus on one specific job. I want you to focus on the feeling of getting a job that you love, that fits what you're looking for, that fits your life holistically. How that comes about with which company, which job title. Now that's more what's, if we want to get spiritual up to the universe, obviously you're applying to these roles, so you get to pick, right? But it's about not controlling how it happens, but believing that it will happen. And that's what the difference is. Same with the apartment. Like, I can believe it's going to happen and I will find the right apartment, but it may not be the exact one I'm currently today thinking about. It could still be something great, but it may not be that one I'm hyper focusing on right now. So that's how you can think about it and how you can look at it from a different perspective of not trying to control the single outcome. Because if you bet on a single outcome, it may not come to fruition. And then what you're telling your brain is, oh, this manifesting thing actually doesn't work. Well, that's not true. It's just you weren't manifesting according to how we should be manifesting, because you're trying to control an outcome rather than wanting something and then letting it happen how it's meant to happen. And there's really two kinds of beliefs, right? There's the specific outcome belief is I will get this exact job, this exact department, versus a holistic belief, meaning something good is coming, even if I don't know what it looks like. A job is coming, even though I don't know what it looks like. An apartment is coming, even though I don't know exactly which building it is or what floor, right? So the first one is very fragile. Specific outcome belief can be extremely fragile because what you're basically saying is like, I'm only successful or I can only reach this goal if it's this exact thing, if it looks this exact way. And that's just not the case at the end of the day. The second version of the holistic, if something good is coming, even though I don't know what it looks like, it can survive a no, because you know that one door shutting doesn't mean that there's no more doors. It just means you have to turn around and look in a different direction. So really the phrase that I love to use is this or something better. So the phrase is this or something better. And that's what I always think about is like, if it's not this, it's going to be something better. If I don't get this, there's a reason and it's going to be something better. So this is a mental escape hatch. Instead of pitting your whole sense of hope onto one specific outcome, this job, this apartment, you tell yourself that two things can be true at the same time. This situation could happen, as in I could get this job, I could get this apartment, and if I don't get this job, if I don't get this apartment, then something better is coming. You get to hold both at once instead of betting everything on just one door. And honestly, that's kind of the point of abundance, is knowing that there's endless options. There's never just one option for you. There isn't. There's never just one apartment. There's never just one job. That's not how it works. And the way that this matters proactively and how this matters proactively and why, it's what lets you actually let yourself want something instead of protecting yourself by staying detached or pessimistic. It allows you to be hopeful in the outcome, which is to get a job, to get the apartment, but you're not feeling that crushed or hopeless feeling if that one option that you have doesn't work out, or that you have to brace yourself for the worst case, right? This gives you different options. And what we need to do is separate believing it'll work out from believing you know exactly how it'll work out. Those two things are not the same. You're not attached, or you shouldn't be attached to the specific mechanism, the how. You should be attached to the belief that it works out somehow. You know, just to go with the job search, a lot of my clients, they're applying to jobs, but they're also tapping into the hidden job market. Their job could come from any of those places. It could even come from a third source, right? Maybe it's a friend of a friend who they meet at a party and they get a job there. So it's about being open to getting a job in any of those ways. They don't know how they're going to get the job. They're believing that they're going to get the job. They're putting themselves out there. They're doing the work, and then they'll see in which way it's going to come. So that's what's important there. And again, it really is about being open to those different perspectives. And I want to be super, super clear. And I always talk about this when I talk about manifesting. It is not about you sitting back and being like, oh, okay, a job will come and not doing anything. That's not what that means. You still have to take action, right? For my clients who are applying, you still have to apply. You still have to network. You still have to put yourself out there. You still have to do your follow-ups. You still have to prep for your interviews. You're still doing all of those things. Where you let go of is forcing one specific path to be the only acceptable way that it happens, because it can happen in a variety of different ways, okay? And again, a closed door, in this case, a rejection, a no to an apartment, whatever it is not proof that the belief is wrong. And this is where the problem happens is we want this one job. And so if we get a rejection, we think, oh no, it's not possible for me. I picked the wrong function. I won't be able to get the salary I'm looking for. I won't be able to get remote. That's not true. It's just that one was not the right situation for you. For them, doesn't matter. It's about looking at the whole thing and saying, I believe that it's possible for me to get what I want regardless, and that it's coming. And it may look different than maybe what I pictured or what I thought, but I'm still open to it. And I'm still open to that being the case. So how do we get to this point of having abundance, of really looking at it from a perspective of not controlling the outcome? I want to talk about specific tools that you can implement to really support yourself. So first thing, I'm a broken record. This is the most important, is nervous system regulation. Okay. Nervous system regulation first, then mindset work. The thing is if your body is in a stress response, okay, racing thoughts, tight chest, that keyed up anxious feeling, you can't think your way into a calmer belief. It's just not going to happen. You could do as many affirmations as you want, but you are not going to feel more regulated at the end of the day. So let's talk about a couple of nervous system regulation tools that you can do, okay? So nervous system regulation, for those who don't know, I've talked a lot about them in my previous episodes as well. You have a vagus nerve that connects from the bottom of your brainstem to the bottom of your spine. It controls your nervous system and how you're feeling and anxiousness and all of that, right? And so our goal is to regulate it. So there's different techniques that you can do. One of the things I love is breathing exercises because it's super easy. You can do it on the go. You can do it literally, no one will know that you're doing it. There's several different ones that are super easy. For example, a box breathing. You do 4 inhales, hold for 4, 4 exhales, hold for 4, then do it a couple times. An easier one to do is you inhale for 4, exhale for 7, and then you repeat those. So that's a great one. Walking is really great nervous system regulation, of course, without a phone or any sort of, TV watching or anything like that. You could do it on a treadmill as well, but short walk. You can put your hand on your chest and just feel yourself breathing and just focus on that. You can do grounding, which would be being barefoot out on the grass, in the sand, in the water. Those are all really great nervous system regulation tools, and these are best and most effective when you do them consistently daily. So definitely pick something that actually feels good to you. The next tool is more of the mindset work. So after we've really started to regulate ourselves, this is where we can focus on reprogramming our brain, reprogramming our thoughts, right? So if your thought is, I'm not capable or I can't get this job, this is where we're working on those beliefs. So things like affirmations, these are positive things that you say out loud to yourself, right? Like, I'll get this job, or I will find an apartment that I love. Those are affirmations that you can say to yourself. And it really, basically, you're speaking to your brain and your body and reframing and retraining your brain to have these beliefs, because then you'll know that it's possible. And this is not spiritual in the sense of there's physics that actually shows why this works, is you saying positive things to yourself actually changes the way your brain thinks and the neurons in your brain. And when that happens, you actually start looking for those opportunities more. So if you say, I'm going to get a job that I love with, 100K salary, let's say, your brain is going to be more open to those opportunities, whether it's you're going to be more open to talking to people at a party, whether it's going to be you don't scroll past a job description because actually it could look really good if you just talk to them about one bullet point that's in there, right? That is going to change the way that you physically walk around in the world and that you think about. And so those are really important. Other forms of mindset work are journaling. I love therapy as well. It's great. Language shifting is just changing the way that you speak. So if you do say something negative, you stop yourself, reframe the thought, and train yourself to not say those negative thoughts, but focus on more abundance. So there's a lot of great mindset tools as well that can be super, super helpful. Meditation can be great, especially if it's paired with an affirmation, doing a visualization exercise. There's lots of great apps that have them for free, so you can definitely do that as well. Now, just visualization as a separate category, it is a really great way to visualize yourself in the role. Now, I will say, and this is a little bit more advanced, but if you know your human design chart, then you can see if you're actually someone who should be visualizing or if you're someone who just kind of has this knowing. I personally am really good at visualizing, but it's not something that I should be doing on a daily basis because for me, it causes me to be more stressed out. So definitely take a look at that. If you're interested in human design, look at your chart. It has that information in there. But do a visualization. Visualize yourself maybe when you're saying your affirmations or maybe when you're doing a meditation. Visualize yourself actually in that situation. Like, for example, if you're visualizing yourself in your job, okay, don't visualize the exact company, but visualize yourself waking up in the morning excited for work. Visualize yourself sitting at your desk at home and having a really exciting meeting because you're getting to talk about a cool project. Like, visualize those things that are actually going to be a part of your job and not necessarily those specifics. And again, it's not about visualizing the specific company, right? Like, I'm not going to visualize the specific apartment, the number on the door, the building. I'm going to visualize how I feel in that apartment, what I'm feeling around it, what makes me happy. And that's what's important because, again, if it's not this, it's something better. And again, I just want to get back to this phrase, this or something better. This is also a really great affirmation and a really great phrase that you can use because it gives you permission to be in the moment and be open to different possibilities. Again, before an interview, before checking an email, before hearing back on the apartment, say to yourself in the universe, it's this or something better. If this is a no, it doesn't mean that you will never have another opportunity for this. It's just saying that it's not this for right now. It's not this for right now, but it doesn't mean that it can't be something else or be something better. And again, I just want to reinforce that it isn't about pushing your negative feelings aside or trying to be toxically positive all the time. It's not about pushing those down. It's not about just tapping into woo-woo all the time and just sitting back and doing whatever. It is really about continuing to put in the work and believing that it is possible for you to get to where you want to be. And I know it can be hard to do that, but just imagine your life. Like, imagine if you saw things the way you actually wanted them, how much more beautiful your life could be, and how many more possibilities that you could be open to. I hope this episode was inspiring and gave you something really to think about no matter what you're going through in your life. If you love the episode, please give it a 5-star review. I really, really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe. Hope y'all have an amazing week, and I'll catch you in the next episode.